Hey everybody, Michael Davis here, and welcome to Bone2Pick. We're really fortunate today. We're sitting down with saxophonist, music educator, composer, arranger, storyteller extraordinaire, Mr. Denis DiBlasio. Denny is widely known as Maynard Ferguson's right-hand man for years, and that's after touring with him full-time for 5 years. He's recorded numerous albums and hundreds of performances with Maynard, as well as being the founder and executive director of the Maynard Ferguson Institute of Jazz Studies at Rowan University. He received his bachelor's degree from Glassboro State, which is now Rowan University, and followed that up with a master's at the prestigious University of Miami. He has served as director of jazz studies at Rowan's for the last 25, 30 years?
37.
37, my bad. 37 years. He is a Yamaha performing artist. He's in demand worldwide as a guest artist and clinician. And I have to say that my relationship with Denny spans 35 years, something like that. And he's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite musicians. And I just tell this real quick story. He hired me back in the early 90s to travel with his band a little bit in New Jersey, playing some high schools on a recruiting kind of trip. And we did a clinic together, and the first clinic we did together, I realized I was receiving the clinic just like the students were, because I just learned so much from hearing him talk and just the way he approaches music. And I've basically kept the same approach for the last 35 years whenever I'm around him, and it's served me well. So before we get started, just a couple thank yous. I want to thank you to Cole's Music here outside of Philadelphia for hosting us today. Wonderful shop here, so if you're in the Philadelphia area, stop by Cole's Music. And also, everybody, if you can, subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook and Instagram, and share it with your friends. We always appreciate your support, and we want to keep doing these, and we can't do it without you. So all your help is greatly appreciated. All right, without any further ado, Denny, thank you so much for being here today and for making this happen. And you're the man. It's like as usual.
And all that was before decaf. So there you have it.
Well, let's start way back, like your early years growing up, not too far from here in New Jersey, and just what got you into music. I know just from doing a little research, you had really supportive parents and were behind you being in music. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Well, they were supportive, and I think they just wanted me to, if I liked it, they would support it. But I think we had a highway behind my house, and I was always falling out of trees and running across this highway, and my mother thought that I'm going to lose this kid. If I can keep this kid alive till 17, my job is done. I don't know what it was about 17, but she told me this, and she said, I saw the saxophone in the window of this music store, that when the sun hit it, it kind of reflected, and on the thumb part of the thumb part, there was an Indian head nickel. And I looked at it, I said, wow, it's shiny and it looks cool. And I want an Indian head nickel. I want to play sax. So we went in the store, and the guy said, play Frank Mazzucca, Westfield Avenue, Pennsauken, New Jersey. And he said, play clarinet first, saxophone's easier. And he was right, but I wanted the sax. So I had one of those metal clarinets. I started with that. And it was just something that was fun. And I would sit and just play it. And my mom thought she could hear me, so I know where this kid is. And he'll be down there for hours just playing. So we're going to support this because keep him alive. Because she was like, don't cross that street, the highway, the trucks coming by. So it was just always something that was fun. It was just another thing like playing sports or whatever. My dad was a construction worker. My mom was a cook. So they loved music. But one of the things I remember that kind of really cemented the thing was I remember sitting on the couch where I could see my feet. So I don't know, you're 3 or 4, I don't know. But my dad came home from work, and he was sitting down in his work clothes, and on TV there was a band playing, and I remember it must have been Basie or Count or something. I wouldn't have known. Yeah. But I remember seeing the guys play black and white TV, the kind of TV that's on the floor, you know, the box that you grew up with. And I'm watching it, and my dad's talking to the TV, and my dad's going, get it, man, get it. And I'm watching my dad talk to the TV. Mom's cooking, you can smell it. And he could smell the cooking. My dad's listening, this is good. And it all became like one good thing. So it was like the music was a good thing, made my dad happy. The cooking was, it all sort of connected. So for me, it was always like a tonic kind of thing. It was part of this overall vibe. I was never like, you better do this. It was just like a good thing. And then as I stayed with it, and then But that's like the beginning of it. And we had a band with another trumpet player, friend of mine, and a drummer, and like we would just jam together. Like no sense. Probably sounded like Schoenberg with a rock beat out of tune, you know, because we didn't know what we were doing. But we would do that forever. So that's why they supported it. And then it kind of took off, and we would see Buddy. We'd see Maynard come around. We saw all the bands. My mother took me to the Mann Music Center, which is one of the big areas around here, to see Count Basie and Judy Garland.
Oh, wow.
Right, and
Amazing.
so I'm looking, there's Basie, and not Leon Thomas, he had a trombone player that did that kind of thing, that he would sing with that yodel thing that Leon Thomas did. Richard somebody or something. Anyway, he was doing that, and then here comes this woman dressed in a red dress, and my mom says, "That's Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz." And I remember saying, "It don't look like Dorothy," because you know she was older. But so I realized later I saw Judy Garland, and I had like no recollection other than she has a red dress on.
Yeah. Wow.
So they supported it, and then it became one of the real fun things to do, along with everything else. And you know.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting hearing you say that, because it's like, that's the infectious nature that you have to this day. Like I've seen you, working with your students, and it's just about, making the music feel good. Well, let's continue. Like talk a little bit about your college experiences, both at Glassboro and then of course University of Miami. Such a great program. But I would imagine you worked with Manny Album some at all at Glassboro.
Manny was teaching there, and Manny learned from the from the Barry sax chair. Because he played with Charlie Barnett. I forget who Manny played with, but
he was a Barry player. I didn't even know that.
Manny played, and he loved the Barry because you understood the functions of the chords.
Right.
Because you're doing a lot of 5/1s, like C, G, F, B flat, A, E, A, that kind of thing, and you would hear it, and you kind of knew what it was. That's how he got into writing, and he showed me some things, but he learned. Like the older guys used to learn hit or miss. You do it and you do it again. As long as you're out there on the road, you have a lab you can work with.
Yeah.
And there weren't any books. You didn't have any schooling. And then when I went to graduate school in Miami, at that time there were only 5 schools that had a graduate degree in jazz. It was Eastman, Miami, North Texas State, and 2 schools on the West Coast. I forget which one they were, but they didn't have graduate. Now they're everywhere, but graduate performing programs for jazz. So when I got down there, I studied with Gary Lindsay and Ronnie Miller, and I had a lot of questions because I was right out of Dexter Gordon and Johnny Griffin, and down there these guys were like Lyle Mays and Weather Report, and Jocko would come down a lot, and Mike would come down, and they were playing that whole other thing, and I was like, what is all this stuff? And I was ready as a student to grab that stuff because I wanted to figure it out. And they had it all codified beautifully.
Yeah,
and that was like, I learned that stuff. I learned what it was to practice it and have it be natural. You could learn a technique, it take you 6 months before it even starts to come out. But I understood it. And I would say in about 6 months, I didn't have any other questions. The only thing was, which one am I going to pick to practice for the next 5 years on that hopefully I'll start to use it. But in writing, if you write, you can apply stuff immediately.
Right.
Like this pentatonic fits that. You can get a voicing from a pentatonic. You can write it and hear it and you've done it. But to have it be natural under your fingers, it needs to ferment, But I had questions. Gary Campbell was down there. Gary Keller was down there. They had great teachers. And that's when I realized these guys were teaching at the level that like Brecker was playing at. Like there are teachers out there that if you're ready are just as heavy and just as effective and good as just players. But I never had, I had Ronnie Miller explain this whole modal system to me. I was like, I would walk out of the lessons going, are you kidding? Aeolian, that's all it is? But I didn't understand how to control a mode with a single line instrument, but he, boom, 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 this is what you do, and then you do it, and you're like, I learned so quick in Miami, I got mad because these guys were such good teachers. If I had these guys in high school, I would have known it in high school. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of proximity. If I happened to be, I got them when I got them, and I'm glad I got them before I went with Maynard. But they taught so clean and clear that if I just knew my major scales, and that was it, and I met these guys, I would have been able to understand how to work harmony, how to create these voicings from grips, all this stuff. And but I mean, I got it. But I was like, damn, I would have understood this 8 years ago if I happened to have it. So I mean, I was just. I guess I was bugged for a good reason, you know. But you know what I mean. When like you studied with Ray Ricker, Ray Wright. So Ray was one of those guys.
Absolutely.
And you look at that book inside the score, you were like, whoa, you know.
I mean, between Gary Lindsay's book and Ray's book, I mean, you're pretty much there, you know. You get most of what you need from those two. But I've always thought the program down in Miami was just exceptional. And
then they had the Afro-Cuban thing down there, which was like the real thing.
Yep.
The real thing, not that the real thing wasn't happening elsewhere, but down there. I was playing in some Afro-Cuban bands, but nobody even spoke English except for one guy who would get me in, and it was just so real.
Yeah,
you know, because that stuff was. There was a time when when maybe it was just starting to end when you were with Buddy, I was out where Latin music would just say Latin.
Right.
And that's it. And then everybody played the Art Blakey groove and nobody said anything. And then it became official. It started to become more official, and then you were realizing, you know, these things aren't toys.
Yeah.
You know, that vibra slap has no place in anybody's ethnicity. You know, it doesn't fit in anything. You know, but we were just anything that made noise. Yeah. I was glad to see that go away.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the great Maynard Ferguson, and you're so associated with him, and we could spend the rest of the interview just talking about Maynard. But
we could
just. If it's even possible, but we were laughing about your stories before we even started the interview, but just maybe give us a synopsis and what he meant to you, and your when you look at your time with him. You even said before the interview started, you're still learning from him even today. But just when you think of Maynard, I mean, if it's possible.
That's such a broad thing, because he was there's a lot. Oh, Mikey, there's so many things, but he was. You know, when I was young, I fell in love with it because my folks loved it. It was just something to love. Done. That was it. And then you go to school, and then you hang out with certain guys who like certain players, and then they don't like other players. And then you go to grad school, and then you have these little pockets of the hard bop guys, and then the modern guys, and modern guys don't like these guys, and they're not. You know what I mean? Like education, it's ruining jazz. That's one of the things that Maynard would say. So, and it kind of spins. And then when I got with Maynard. I remember Maynard, we were up front, maybe the first year and a half, I was like a regular side man. Then we started to kind of get close after a while, and then he became like a big brother, you know. And I left for about a year, and I came back, and we did the small groups, and the relationship changed into really like, hey, what about this, or how would you handle that? And he was, he loved everything. And I remember we sat in the front of the bus, and we would give these clinics where Maynard would talk for 45 minutes, and then the band would do 45. And that's how we came up with that DiBlasio's Bop Shop book. I made an outline of what I sort of took it over, and all the guys in the band would talk about something, and I had this outline, and we fleshed it out, and it became this DiBlasio's Bop Shop book. Jeff Jarvis put it out at Kendor. And so Maynard would talk about high notes and breathing, like yoga breathing, and we would do all this stuff. And it just, I mean, I always thought, okay, that's cool. I think he has to say something, so he does that. And he talks about, you know, I have this book on the art of breathing, and you should all get it. And kids are walking around going, just like, but he was playing high before he.
Of course, yeah.
And that's a whole other story, how he got up there, how he started playing high. But he said, oh, we're on the bus. And we're saying, boss, did you know this guy? Who was Bunny Berrigan like? He goes, oh, Bunny. And Maynard get his horn. Buses driving, you know. And he imitates Bunny Berrigan. And his sound got smaller and like kind of sweet. You know, it was Maynard's ideas, but he sounded like Bunny Berrigan. We're like, oh, that's cool. Hey, how about Clifford? He goes, oh, Brownie. Oh, Brownie. Man, and then he played like Clifford. And, you know, Clifford tongues like almost every note.
Right.
So he was like imitating Clifford. And you could tell he was sounding like Clifford. And we were like, whoa, well, it's about Miles. He goes, oh, Miles. Well, yeah. And he grabs his mute, he puts it in, and he backs way off, and he's playing like relaxed. And we're like, holy smokes, boss, this is great. So what do we say? Oh, we said Bobby Hackett. He goes, oh, Bobby Hackett. Great. Alcoholic, but great guy. And he would play like Bobby Hackett thing. And he said, he goes, Bobby Hackett was great when he sold his trumpet, and the back of the Union paper said, high range, hardly used, Bobby Hackett. So he would imitate these guys, and I remember telling Maynard, I said, boss, this is your clinic.
Yeah.
This is the clinic you should do, because
Yeah.
you always talk about listening to other people, but the fact that we can name these guys, and he loved Wynton, he loved Freddie, he loved Louis. So I'm thinking, he just loved everybody who played trumpet.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, who's my favorite? Everybody was all in a group of people that he embraced that were all inspirational to him. So he would play and imitate all these guys. But there's your clinic.
Yeah.
You're telling you, and he says, well, maybe, let me think about that one. I said, well, what's there to think about? Boss, this is perfect. You're talking about this hatha yoga breathing. This doesn't know what you're talking about. You do this. This is an example of what you're telling them to do. And I think he looked at it like it was like a trick or a show-off thing. But he didn't. And I was like, everybody should hear him imitate. We just named 6 guys, and he pinged all of them.
Yeah, sure.
And when we said Dizzy, he grabbed the harmony mute that Dizzy gave me. He took the one mute out, and he grabbed the harmony mute that Dizzy gave him, that copper, real nice one. There were only like 6 of them left. And he put that in, and he was doing it. You know how Dizzy would rhythmize that stuff. And I was thinking, man, this, even if he did it one time and we filmed it, that would be like a lesson for, it's exactly what you're talking about. So what happened with me is I started to love it, seeing my mom and dad, smelling the food. My dad's talking to the TV. It was fun. I get educated. I get all, this crew, that crew, the other group. Then I get with Maynard, and I'm right back where I was when I was a kid. It was like the Mufasa circle of jazz life. I'm back where, liking everything. That's why Maynard didn't like competitions. He says, what are you winning? You're winning if you're doing it. And when I do my festival at Rowan, it was never competitive. That's why it's just 3 day long. I can make it 4 days if I wanted, but probably have a heart attack. Maynard kind of brought me back home again, and I realized it. And I thought, you know what? I'm parking myself here. I'm not, because everybody's they're set in like the marching band competitive thing, stuff you can measure that they hit the mark at the same time, all this. But jazz is, if you're doing Basie, or if you're doing Duke, or you're doing a Sammy Nestico chart, who wins? There's no criteria.
No.
And they chase something differently. So Maynard kind of brought me back to that thing of really liking it. And he had a lot of great sayings. He would drop little nuggets. I think you and I were talking last week about some of the things he would say. He said, well, you guys are always talking about moving to New York. And I said, well, New York and LA, that's kind of where it is. He goes, yeah, but you're talking about the New York, like when Tatum, and because that only lasted 8 years. And I caught the end of it with the Birdland Dream Band, and that Johnny Griffin, all these guys who were going to Europe, Dexter, Phil Woods. And he said, but if you want to make a living in this music, just play for everybody who lives in between LA and New york. And he would drop nuggets like that. And I was like, whoa, that's it. Or sell fun, and you can play whatever you want. And there's a whole story that comes up. So all these little nuggets as I'm teaching bring up, I just remember stuff that he says. That's what I mean about he's still teaching me. Like he's been, going for 20 years maybe? When did he pass?
Nice.
6? Okay. Yeah, so 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years.
And I'll teach a kid, and the kid will say, something, and I'll just pull up a quote and say it, knowing that I heard it from Maynard. And I'm thinking, man, he's still helping me out.
Yeah.
This guy, still helping me out.
It's amazing too when you look at his life. he was such an important figure, obviously in the brass world. He's a god,
Oh, yeah.
But also in the jazz world, and you look at. Kent and I were talking the other day on the phone about the alumni that went through, all the way from Chick Corea to Wayne Shorter and Zawinul, and and then all the brass players and all the great sax players, yourself included. And it's amazing what he gave to the world and the music world. And I remember being on Buddy's band, which was obviously a very different vibe from the leaders' point of view and their leadership styles. But that's the way it always seemed to us, on Buddy's band, is that Maynard was he liked everything. He wanted everything to be good and to feel good. And Buddy was way, clearly about intimidation and fear, which could be effective, I suppose. But
well, he was, maybe was it you, or I was talking to somebody. Well, Maynard was a meditator. At some point he got, he was friends with Timothy Leary, That's a whole thing.
Sure.
But he would meditate every day, and if you had a room next to him, he would play this tape that had 21 ohms, and you'd be laying here like, boom. We're like, oh, boss is next door, and he would do his thing, and he always carried around he had a little book with like affirmations, and and he worked at being positive, like he worked at it. And you would see where sometimes he may be bugged, and he would stop and choose the positive, whatever it was. And I remember thinking, damn, that's more influential than just being around somebody who is positive.
Right.
Actually, somebody who chooses it and works at it. And of course, he had Ed Sargent to do all the dirty work, but he, because a road manager has to take care of certain things, but everything was like he always worked at it, and that really has stuck with me afterwards, to see how you basically have a choice and how you're going to handle. You can't choose what's coming at you, but you can choose how you deal with it. And if you can be mindful enough to go that way, I mean, he would do that all the time. So that's the way he was when I met him. I don't know what he was like back in the bebop days, but he always seemed, from what I gather, like he was friendly and happy. But this spiritual thing that he had, it was real, and it was great to see it, because now that I'm off it, it's work that you do alone. It's not like you don't do it in a group. You do it by yourself, and you have to have that time by yourself to kind of put it together, so you can then go out and deal with whatever comes at you. But we saw that every day. You didn't really realize it, and before he would go on stage, he didn't want anybody knocking at the door asking for a raise, or somebody who wants more solos, or saying, I'm going to quit. He wanted to be around just positive vibes. That's why he would come out. And he told me, he says, remember, I was on for 4 years. I was off. Then I went out again. When I was off, I had my own little group. And then when I went out, I had leader questions for him. I said, how do you handle this? He goes, well, you got to get your direction of energy straight.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. What does that mean?
Continue.
And he says, the energy goes in this direction. He goes, remember this. And I remember he told me, because when I asked him leadership questions, he would say, remember this, like the Godfather thing. Remember that. Whoever comes to you was the traitor. Remember that. So he goes, remember this. The energy goes from the leader to the band to the crowd. That's how it is. You can't beg the crowd to like you if the band's not into it. You got to send your energy to the band, and they send it back out there.
Wow.
And that's how you develop this thing. And I was thinking, whoa.
Wow.
I said, you really think that? And he goes, oh yeah. So he's back to getting all pumped up. So when he walks out on the stage, he's like, hey, bum. That's why he walks out. And if you're in a bad mood, or you feel sick, and you see him bouncing out, you're like, oh. Okay, he's he pulls you, and it kind of works. So he would talk about stuff like that. Now I'm dealing with my band when I teach over at Rowan, and we're going to give a concert, and who's late, who doesn't show up, and you have such power with if I just went like, you're late again, damn it, it's over. You know what I mean? You really have the wheel of that if you know. And I just think of him.
Yeah.
And so once we realized that he was. He didn't want anybody to mess around. He didn't want to have to deal with anything negative. Then we thought, let's see if we can crack him up, because he was a crack up. And we would do dumb things. He liked toilet humor, Three Stooges stuff. And once we realized, oh my God, you can get Maynard to laugh till he cried, till he couldn't breathe. Like you can get him into one of those. And that happened 3 times. We were like, yes, we got him.
We got him.
So we thought we'd try it out. So they gave, the deli tray. You get the deli tray.
A tainted deli tray.
The deli tray, where you pick up the lunch meat and you hold it in the light, and you see that petroleum byproduct on it, right? So we get it, we folded it, and we ripped it, and folded it, and stuffed roast beef up our chops. So all the shredded meat was hanging out our mouth. And I knocked on his door, and we still, I think, were like this. And Maynard opened it up, because Ed was like, what do you want to do? I said, I think we're going to crack him up. He goes, okay, he's good with that, but don't complain. I said, I'm not, I get it. So Maynard opens the door, and we have this roast beef hanging. I said, man, our chops are shot from last night. And he was like, and he looked and went, and then he started laughing. And then from then on, we could always do something like that. So we used to try and hit him before he went out to crack him up. And that kind of formed a different type of thing in the relationship, because then he looked forward to it.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to deal with anybody. We were complaining. We were just doing slapstick.
Yeah.
But he loved that stuff. And were you on the band when we played side by side in Boston when Maynard was losing it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you were on that gig. Well, there's a thing to that gig. Maynard's son Bentley passed beforehand.
Right.
On Friday, Maynard went home. He came back on Monday. He didn't miss a gig, and we did 6 more weeks.
Yeah.
And that gig was in that 6-week thing.
Right. Yeah.
And you guys were set up on the left, and we were set up on the right. And Maynard, prior to that, was having, like, we were watching him, we were walking with him. And, you know, we were concerned because your son passes, you go home, and now you're out on the bus for 6 weeks with us. We didn't know if it was going to be over.
Yeah.
Right? So he would get on the mic sometimes and talk to the crowd before that gig, and sometimes it would start, like he would start to drift. You could tell he was trying to work things out, yet control himself. It was getting a little like,
yeah.
Ooh, I think it was. So when we played, and Armand Zildjian was in the crowd.
Yep.
You know, so Buddy was here. I remember I was over here because I was like next to Buddy. You guys are over there. Maynard's over there. And then Maynard said, we're going to both play our arrangements of Birdland together.
Yeah, in different keys.
And we're going to see what it is. And I remember I leaned over. I said, what key's yours? What key's you're thinking? And Buddy was like, uh-oh. But Maynard, he was kind of going off. And like ours was an F, yours was a G. I remember it was like a whole step apart. And I thought, this might work for some of it, but holy smokes. So we started, Ray Brinker was on the band, and he just counted it off. You couldn't stop it. And Armand Zildjian's in that, and I thought, oh man, this is wacky. And then Buddy got up and walked off.
Yeah,
remember,
right.
Walked
Yeah.
out, and then we kind of got out of it somehow. And I think the guys just laid out, and somebody took a solo, whatever. And nothing happened out of that, you know.
Yeah.
So then we're playing in Washington, D.C., and you guys are playing Blues Alley. And Buddy, did you play Blues Alley? Okay.
Sure.
So we went to see the band, and Jay Craig was in it. Jay
Yeah,
Craig Barrett,
yeah.
yeah. He's the one who gave me the Buddy tape and said, "Don't give it to anybody."
Yeah.
Saw how that worked out. So
yeah. By the way, Lee Musiker blamed me in a Jazz Times article. I'm the one who got it out there. I called him up immediately. I'm like, "Are you out of your mind?"
So the bus was parked in that little alley by Blues Alley,
right.
and you guys were just finishing up. And I went outside, and it was Buddy. And I always thought that, you know, everybody was trashing Buddy. You know, I mean, Buddy has enough people, but a lot of guys love Buddy.
I love him. I loved him, yeah.
A lot of guys like Menza and those guys, they loved Buddy. And I thought, boy, that thing could have gone so south.
Yeah.
In Boston, that I knocked on the door, and Marcus opened it. I know Steve sure. Marcus. I say, listen, this is, and he goes, Denny, what are you doing? I said, yeah, we're here in town too. I came to see you guys. Is Buddy in there? Can I just talk to Buddy for like a sec? And he goes, well, yeah, just a second, because, you know, so anyway, then he opens the door, I go in, the Buddy had his robe on afterwards.
Yeah,
right? And his tubes. Like, I said, Buddy, you don't know me, I'm with Maynard, blah, blah. He goes, yeah, it's okay. And he was real nice. I said, look, this thing that happened in Boston, I just want to thank you on behalf of the guys in Maynard's band, because he was losing it. Yeah. Because he was going through dealing with grief. I mean, grief, everybody processes grief different. And that was a thing, and we're still kind of watching him. And I said that, you know, you were like, when you just like let it happen, and which was cool, but nobody could control it. But you were like you handled that in like a class act way, and I just want to thank you from the guys in the band, because we talked about that afterwards. And he was cool. He was like, "Well, tell him I hope he's okay, and I hope I'm, thinking about him, and that's a hard thing, but tell him I'm thinking about him." He said, "All right, buddy," and just shook his hand and left. And I was like, because nobody thinks of Buddy like that,
right?
But he was. And then somebody was telling me that Buddy would get mad because he played better. It was a thing that he would do. Like sometimes he'd yell at the band, and then the guys would play really good, and they like wink at you, like it was all to put on, just like because Maynard had to get happy. But everybody preps different. Like who's a method actor, who's not a method actor.
You know, the funny thing about that Boston gig is, and I'm sure you remember this, was during Buddy's legendary West Side Story drum solo. And he's just going nuts, and then all of a sudden you hear from behind him this trumpet starts improvising with him. And
that's right.
I just put the fear of God in me. I was like, oh my God, what is happening now? Yeah. And Maynard walks up and standing right next to Buddy, and I was sitting next to Buddy. So
that's
it's like,
right.
And they start, and Buddy played along.
There's a photo of that.
Yeah, you posted a photo not too long ago.
That photo came up of Maynard and Buddy playing together. It looked like they were actually playing that. Oh, I remembered that. Well, that's what I mean, because we were like, uh-oh. Yeah. Anything. We all heard that recording of the band, Buddy yelling was like, this could go a million ways. And there's Armand Zildjian out there. But Buddy actually was the one that made it.
Yeah,
even it out.
He did.
It was
I won't go into it right now, but I have a couple of really good Buddy stories about how there was he had a good heart in his own way. He came up he came up in vaudeville, and his parents were in vaudeville act. I doubt he even made it through high school, and he that's what he did. Anyway, there was definitely a positive side to him in that regard. Well, we could talk about Maynard for a few more hours, but I appreciate everything you said, and it's nice to hear like you got life lessons out of it, like even more. More than it transcended music,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing all that. Let's talk about your early years as a jazz educator.
Make sure you don't have any tax issues on there. As an educator?
Yeah. So did you go after Maynard's band, you got the gig at Rowan?
After Maynard's band, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was going to move to New York.
Okay.
And I think I went to New York one time, and we were going to look at, we're going to go up and, I think we went up to Migliori's apartment, just to see like places. Right? And I was thinking, well, I'm not going to go to L.A., it would cost too much at least. Let me go look at some places, because that's what you did back then. Yeah. And then I started getting calls for clinics. Like somebody called me because we played Tacoma, Washington. I got a call from a band director, because now the band's going around after 5 years of being on it without me, and then somebody will see it, and then they would call me, say, "Do you want to come out?" And I said, "Oh, sure, I'll come out." And then they do a gig in Tacoma. Then somebody calls who's for Denver. I did a gig out in Denver, and all of a sudden I'm getting called to do all these gigs because Maynard's touring and I'm not in the band. So as in the wake of the band, I'm getting these calls. Would you come out and work? Because that was the time when guys would go and do clinics and things like that. So that whole thing started. And in about, 2 months, I would say 7 weekends I was away, which is not the way to break into New York. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right,
so
right.
If you're going to,
sure.
Even if you live in Jersey, guys don't want to call you, because you don't know, you could be stuck in that tunnel at any time. So it's, any time of day you could be stuck in that thing. So the...
know it well.
Yeah, right. So... to be in the city, but yet not be there, I would just be throwing money away. And before I knew it, this clinic thing just like took off. Uh-huh. And I was like, well, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't go to, maybe there's something here. Then I taught part-time at Temple, part-time at School of the Arts, which is now closed, and part-time here at Glassboro. Mm-hmm. And so I had that, and I was doing clinics, and I was playing every single gig that came down the road, like we all do. You say yes to everything. And then this Rowan gig opened up to like more of a full-time thing, which enabled me to cut loose Temple and the School of the Arts. So and then this became like a full-time thing, but I kept doing the clinics. Plus they like it when you do that.
Sure.
Because it's scholarly activity, where to us it's a gig, right? So it all worked. It all fed each other really nicely.
Scholarly activity.
Yeah, they're called scholarly activity. If you do anything that professionally that you're doing, that you're teaching, whatever it is, science, chemistry, whatever, then they like that and they want to advertise.
Also good for recruitment, I would imagine. Too,
yeah. Well, it's all. I mean, everything works everything connects. Everything works. So I did that, and then this became the teaching thing, and then this teaching thing, that's a whole other series. We could do one of these talks about each one of these offshoots of the turnpike. Right. The road is over here, teaching is over here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we got into it a couple months ago. We had a really good conversation on the phone about how jazz education has evolved. We're seeing all these programs now. Like when I was at Eastman, there was no undergraduate jazz program. Now everywhere there's an undergraduate jazz program practically. But what's your viewpoint on just how it's changed in your 37 years as?
Wow. Well, that's
a whole interview in itself.
That's exit 7. So that's it has changed. I used to totally redo my way I taught every 7 years. Then it became every 5 years. Now it's just fluid. It's fluid because of so many reasons. It's so different. And like what we were saying last night when we were at dinner, like the gig I'm going to say goodbye to isn't the gig I said hello to, right? So what I'm doing now is like completely different. I used to have I had that photo of everybody at the steps, great day in Harlem, and a photo of Louie in my office. And students would come in and they would know these guys. And then they would come in and they would kind of know these guys. And after a couple of years, they were like, who's that guy? So it was Louis Armstrong. He goes, does he play Philly? I said, not unless you could bring him back, But no, and then you had to introduce him. Now they don't even see it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on now between the culture of the kind of kids that come in and what they're listening to and what they know. There's less of a reference. When I went to school there, we would play all the tunes from the Consummation album, Tiptoe and Fingers and all that stuff, and then we would go to the Vanguard and watch them play it.
Yeah.
You know, because that it was going on. You know, and you would watch. I would be watching Pepper, and then then you're playing this part. So it was really a different connection. Now they don't know. They don't even know Maynard.
Right.
So it's not in their culture. It's not that nobody's bad, nobody's mean. It's just how things are changing.
Yeah.
And now, the changing thing is musically. That's one part of it. Like how to get them into like the chords and the scales and transcribing and all that. But there's something else happening where it's so not part of what their normal thing is. Like Hilda, my wife, she used to teach what they called preschool disabled back then. And I was talking about this, and she said, and she nailed it, and it makes more sense now than it ever did. Because what's tricky about it isn't that they don't know this music. They either do or they don't. It's that, and she said it, she goes, 90% of teaching is getting their attention. The other 10% is whatever your thing is, math, geology, jazz. But to get them to actually, guys, over here, which is well because they're so, their lives are so scattered where they could put their attention now, especially since COVID and with phones. It's just like, even in rehearsal, like there's the focusing thing is a huge part of teaching. Like, guys, you have to teach things in little chunks because they're used to quick, and they just learn differently. So to fall in love with JJ and just be thinking about JJ and transcribing JJ for hours, that doesn't exist. It's like you have to show this is JJ, this is why he's important. Try and sound like that. Oh yes, really sound good. Try. You're trying to get them to love somebody, because once they love somebody, then it kind of, that's the crack in the you can try to open that up a little bit and get in there. And I'm finding that one of the things they can do to like somebody is to transcribe them. And as soon as they can, you have to transcribe the right person. You don't start with Cannonball, you start with Paul Desmond. And then once they could do it, then they kind of like them because they can do it. So Paul Desmond's great.
Right.
And that's like the beginning of it. So that's like a whole different, it's really more introductory all over. Now if you're around a high, like a little bit more high pressure area like New York or LA, it might be a little different, but in most of the country, they're all, they play, when they play, they're playing big band charts, but they're not listening to big band music. So they play big band charts like marching band, because they've been doing marching band since August, marching band camp, playing in marching band September, October, November, a little bit of December. They go home for the break, they come back, now they're playing jazz band music after 5 months of marching band, playing as loud as you can, then you hand out Little Darlin', and they're like, oh, this is easy, it's all quarter notes. I said, yeah, but it's not about that, it's more like concept. Oh yeah, we have it. Bop, 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 bop. It's like, Little Darlin' shouldn't sound like the first 10 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. You know what I mean? It's just so loud. And it's like, no, you guys don't get it. And that, teaching them that kind of concept is such a, I teach everything with recordings. Everything with recordings, let them hear it, especially the rhythm section. Drummers don't know they have the worst written part in music ever.
Totally.
If they're looking at it and they see slashes and they just keep looking at it because they don't want to look at you because they don't know what. So I said, don't look at the part, listen to the recording. This is what that it indicates. You have to make it up, and you have to, it's a lot of introductory work. And once so I'm always doing a lot of bassy, because all the meaty stuff is in medium swing, all that boo, va, doo, vap, ba, boo. And one year in my festival, because I have that 3-day festival, you did it, Doug did it, is everybody's playing like rock charts, everything's really loud, and Clem DeRosa used to do it with us. Clem.
Yeah, sure.
Remember Clem?
Yeah,
oh, man.
Of course.
He was always he was like baking soda.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, guys, let's try that a little bit softer. And the kids were like leaning and like, oh my God. So, and he would tell me, he said, Clem, that was pretty loud. He goes, yeah, they're decibel rating, yeah. I remember he was saying, but it was just so loud. So I sent out a notice. I said, look, they're not judges, but the clinicians would like it if we could maybe all agree to do one medium swing number, not real fast because that's a different way to play, and not a ballad because that's another thing. But medium swing is where 90% of all that articulation and shaping, all that stuff works. I got blowback. Oh no, we like the stuff that we're picking. We're liking, because rock tunes are like marching tunes.
Right.
Latin tunes are kind of like straight eighth marching tunes. So anything they can bring that marching head into is what they play. So when you say medium swing, nobody's playing Teddy the Toad on a 50-yard line. You know what I mean? No one's playing that Sammy Nesticos. So it's a whole different, I'm teaching in college at a more introductory level because culturally they just don't hear it a lot. As opposed to, we were actually seeing the guys. We knew what it sounded like, we just couldn't do it. Now it's like, let's hear what it sounds like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and with
100%.
that comes that's a big exit. And with that comes a whole bunch of other things. But
Sure.
that's why kids are great. And the kids, once they catch it, they'll catch it. And you hope they catch it early so you have at least 3 or 4 years with them interested in it. And we do good stuff. We do your charts, we do a lot of Doug's charts.
Yeah.
And because they're all playable, you can teach all that basic stuff, But,
Well, I'm when you talk about drum parts, I'm guilty as charged. My drum parts are the worst.
No. You should. Well, some of these older drum parts where they wrote everything out, and the guys look at it, and their eyeballs go like this, and they can't, they don't know what it is. That's why I do everything with recordings, and you have to. It's like, it's really teaching by sound, not by. You always play the recording so they hear what it should sound like. It just saves. You can't talk a rhythm section into place.
Yeah.
They're the one section where everybody's doing something completely different on the same style of tune.
Right. Right.
And they all are, and nothing is on the part. They read it like they would a concert band or orchestra or marching band, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
So, but they're right in what they're doing. But they need to know that this means something else which you haven't heard.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I got to say too, the one time I only worked with Clem once, but it was at your festival, and you hired me, and Clem was there, and it was same thing as when I met you. It was just like, wow, I'm just going to soak up what this guy's
Clem
saying.
was
What a brilliant educator! Like he just had
Clem and Will Lee, and 2 other guys I think were like in charge of why big bands are in schools.
Oh,
They started it like around New York and Long Island. I mean, their whole reason why there's big bands in these schools because these guys started something way back with the Kenton camps.
Yeah, right.
They were the ones that started the Kenton thing. So Clem was like, I said, Clem. So I said, wait a minute. You mean when I was in high school and we were playing a jazz band, we had that program because you guys started it? And he goes, yeah. Nobody had big bands. They had like maybe a dance band, maybe. But he was part of a big movement to get big bands, like dance bands or whatever they would call it back then. So I said, so we're talking about a light bulb, and you're like Thomas Edison. you're like the guy, one of the guys who invented jazz bands in schools. And he goes, well, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. He was one of the handful, like Will Lee's dad, him. A couple other guys, they were the Tom Ferguson, maybe those guys. They were the start of what became National Association of Jazz Educators. Previous to IAG.
But even previous to that, they were making this thing happen.
Making it happen. Yeah,
because when I grew up, it was already happening.
Yeah,
but I didn't realize it was just a couple of years old when I was in high school and we had a jazz band. But I didn't realize I was going to meet one of the guys that actually made it happen. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your composing and arranging. One of the things that I'll always remember was our good friend who's passed on now, unfortunately, Dean Whitten. I was down doing something at Rowan, and he goes, oh, you should stay for the symphonic band concert where they're doing one of Denny's compositions. I was like, what? He wrote a piece for symphonic band? I said, yeah. So I stayed, and you were playing in the band. I think you were playing flute. No, maybe it was saxophone. I can't remember what it was. But you wrote this piece. It was beautiful. And anyway, I just wanted in another kind of overly general question, but talk a little bit about your approach to composing and arranging. And obviously you did a lot for Maynard. I know that you kind of became his staff writer in a way.
Maynard was... Well, that was back when most bands had like 3 guys who could write.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. That was a period where it was Willie Maiden, Sebesky, Slide Hampton, and then it was like Chris Brayman and myself, and like now everybody writes. Yeah. Because all the programs have writing programs. But the writing for Maynard, that thing was when I'm in Miami, and I don't know if you went through this, but I would think almost any writer would. You learn a technique, and then when you write a chart, you just load that technique into it. Right? You just load everything in. So I remember Gary Lindsay showing me like 4-way close harmony, and or block voicing or whatever, who's a density, whatever. Everybody calls it something different. And then I wrote yes or no, Wayne Shorter, but it was all 4-way close. It's like the wrong voicing for the wrong style. But I wrote it all up, and he goes, yeah, well, you understand the technique, but now you have to look at the, how does it fit and all that. So when I got with Maynard, I was writing a lot. I wrote a chart that was like the typical chart you'd write in Miami when you're learning all these techniques, like like fourths and outlines against it, or like somebody in like the Midwest is going to be like, oh, I'll be whistling that one, Marge. It's just like, it was just terrible. So, but we didn't play it. Even though the band played it, some of the guys were like, oh, that's cool, but it's nothing you could remember. And then I wrote something. I figured, let me write Maynard. I'm listening to him play. I wrote like 5 charts. They all worked, but he didn't like them. And he was saying, well, you know what, let's put that away. We'll look at it again later, which meant you're never going to see it again. And then I wrote something, and I put him on a bridge of this tune that was operatic, because I'm listening to him. I see he plays high, but he's in bop high.
Yeah.
He does opera high. So give him something lyrical, especially with a jump that goes up that he can just drill. And then that was the first tune we played. And I was realizing, oh, I get it. Okay. I have to write for him so he can do his thing. And then everything started to hit, because I was just like spitting out like technique, which wasn't musical. But then I realized how to put him into it. And then I asked him one time, I said, what do we need? And he goes, it'd be nice to have like a fast samba, something like a fast samba. I said, okay, so if you're going to play a samba, let's say you're going to solo in it, what key do you want to be in on trumpet? And he goes, oh, write it in F for me, because it's just 1 and 2. So I said, okay, so if it's like an E flat vamp, you could just go nuts. He goes, oh yeah, I don't want to use that third valve. So I was like, okay. So I wrote like some fast samba in E flat and just vamped like bong, bong, or E flat or F minor, it doesn't matter, he's still playing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I love this tune. I was like, all right, I get it now. I get it. So then you learn how to write for somebody for whatever, to show him off or build, save him, let him take the peak. He loved it. And then after a while, I just knew how to write for him, or I knew what he liked, so then more of my charts would hit. And then, so you're writing, and a lot of stuff, we're at the Bebop Buffet, that thing we did it live from San Francisco. That was supposed to be Maynard and Dizzy. We were supposed to record that in Chicago with Maynard and Dizzy taking all the solos. And Dizzy couldn't make it. So then eventually we were going to end the tour in San Francisco. He decided, let's do it. And we had like Tim Reese was on it, and we opened it up, and everybody played on it. Me. So, it's funny what happens to your chart based on whatever's going on the road and all that.
Yeah.
And then when I got the gig teaching here, I was writing for publishers, wrote for different publishers, and, a lot of publishers, they had Hal Leonard and Kendor and Doug, and, they're just, writing. And I always was interested in how do these guys write these other types of pieces. Like I could listen to a jazz arrangement and kind of see what somebody's doing, but when you're listening to like Daphnis and Chloe, and I'm thinking, what are the A, B, C sections here? Where's the bridge in this tune? And then I was like, how do these guys construct this thing? And I had a friend kind of taught me like the deep dive of how it is kind of like A, B, C, but the B is based on A, and they develop. And well, when does this section finish? Well, when the development's finished. It's not 8 bars. It's not like A Train. Mm-hmm. And I just was like, man, this is like a whole. I remember I talked to Fedshock one time because I wouldn't even have had to think how to write something like, Afternoon of a Faun or something like. It's just a theme that becomes something else. That's something else that refers back, and that kind of construction was a whole different thing. I read that Persichetti book, that 20th century, harmony, all those techniques, and just really, really interesting stuff. So at school here, I wrote a couple things up for, like the wind ensemble, sketch it all out, and then try these different techniques. And it was kind of fun. I mean, it's a different way to write. It's interesting, but where you can leave with a good band, like when you record your stuff, when you have a rhythm section, they're going to take care of everything.
Yeah.
But writing for an ensemble like a concert band, every single note for every single person has to be written out.
Right.
You know, you can't. It's not like, hey, do whatever you want. No, they don't know how to do that. You know, we're going to open it up for the clarinet section. You know, but it was interesting. The whole writing thing was kind of interesting. And then the guy who was in charge of the comp program, he left, so I took that over too. So for 13 years, I was the head of comp also, and then I was able to really kind of mess around with a lot of those types of things. A lot of people here would study with Vincent Persichetti because he taught in Philly, and he was head of.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and he was head of the Juilliard program.
Right,
up
right.
there, and then he was head of Curtis, but he was really like he taught like a lot of the techniques, and another great teacher. I never met him; he was already gone, but he. Yeah, I know a couple of guys that would study with him, and we would talk a lot about it. And I would go to his house, and he smoked cigarettes all the time. He had turtles all over his yard. He loved turtles, you know. And I'm like, no kidding, yeah. And
no kidding.
But you know, he said he was talking to Vince, and Vince said he likes to have different pieces in different stages of development. Meaning one piece he's writing, he's just beginning to sketch it out. The other one, he has it sketched out, but he has to fill it in. The other one, he needs to harmonize. The other one, he's putting articulations on and finishing it up. And the other one, he's preparing parts. Because if he has different things in different stages, he may not be in a mood for harmony. He may not want to think too much, so he's going to go prepare parts. So he can just always...
Wow, great system.
Isn't that great?
That's great.
When all I had to do was hear it and think, whoa. So you just have, maybe nothing's clicking, or maybe you got a new idea and you want to mess with it, so you're over on this stage. But he says, I like to have a couple different pieces at different stages. So talking things like that,
that's
I was
really,
like, man,
yeah, that's
cool?
a great idea.
Yeah,
I
didn't come up with it, you know. So he was, yeah. But so that composition thing, I was learning a lot from that too, because I always thought that, you know, you listen to like First Love Song by Brookmeyer or something, and you can kind of see how he wrote a melody and how he treated it. But you know, you listen to like The Rite of Spring, and it's like, what the heck? I mean, where do you even start? Like, what's going on? And it's a different kind of way to look at it. Which once I kind of got into it, I was like, oh, I see. It's real developmental. You know, you just don't. Yeah. Unless it isn't. Yeah. Unless it's through compose, where it's always new.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you're making up your own rules, whichever one you catch, this is the one we're going to follow. And you know, so it was interesting. I don't know. So the writing thing is, oof. Yeah.
Well, you've had tremendous success at it, and for good reason. As we kind of wind down a little bit, like how do you? We talked about it a couple months ago. About where do you? How do you see the future for Denis DiBlasio? What are you looking at going forward?
You know, it's interesting. There's a lot of. I'm still playing. You know, I'm not a lot of the kind of thing. Well, as long as I have this full-time job, I'm still doing that. You know, I didn't know after COVID if I would even go out anymore. You know, but this year, man, I was jammed up. I did Doug's Festival. I was in Honolulu. I did an Allstate. You know, it all happened like within 6 weeks. It was all boom. And I was like, whoa, well, that was nice, because I didn't know if that clinic thing would start up again. So, because that's kind of for a while, the band directors, after COVID, they didn't want anybody coming to their school.
Sure.
It was they didn't have much that they felt that they could offer to even fix. A lot of programs are decimated. But still playing. I'm fluting more.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I like, you know, that. I don't know what that's about, but it's just kind of, I was talking to, who was I talking to? Just about how to, I was reading about Wayne Shorter, and somebody asked Wayne, they said, you haven't recorded much, like towards, you know, like before he passed, you haven't recorded much. And he goes, well, I'm in another time of life. I don't need to record. There's other things besides music. This is Wayne talking, right? A guy only did is like change composition for jazz. That's all, right? He goes, I'm just. There's other things like I like nature, and I want to do some other things. I like history, and I want to do that. So, you know, it's time in life to do like some things. I don't need to record, and if I do, I'll record. But I mean, it's just totally fine being free enough to like, you know, what are you interested in now? Like, no need to keep the past upright. If you're looking forward and you really want to just like live looking forward. So, you know, I'll teach for a while, I guess. I don't mind. I like going to these different schools and helping these bands. I mean, that's easy in and out. Probably come up with some projects. You know, writing, come up with there's a friend of mine, Ronnie Thomas, who's a composer, improvisational composer, who's been doing it for a long time. We had a couple projects that lined up. and a friend of mine gave me like 20 Native American cedar flutes that are all pentatonic, like like C pentatonic starting on A, like it's like minor. They're set, but God, they sound beautiful. And we just may do something where I play them and he improvises around them. I have some free studio time. It's the future on the other side of teaching is kind of vague because I'm still teaching.
Right.
But I have interests that are like lining up for me to like ping in when it's time, you know. But it's good, and teaching is still, I still like it. It's a different job, they're at a different space, but that's just life.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying that, not just me.
For sure.
You know, everybody comes in with that whole thing about getting their attention. That's everybody. Everybody's having that talk.
Sure.
And so that's fine. If it was just me, I think I would have been done a long time ago, but we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah. Well, last question. What do you, if you were to give one piece of advice to, which I'm sure you do on a regular basis with your students, but one piece of advice for young people, either going into teaching or music or really whatever, it kind of everybody's in the same boat these days in the younger generation. But what would be your one piece of advice?
During COVID, I called a bunch of friends to talk to the kids, right? Because that's all you can do for a jazz band. We would meet virtually. When I was talking about that, and one of my friend John Danberg, who is in, you might be interested. He makes
up
everything.
In Alaska. That John Danberg. Yeah.
John Danberg. This guy has got it wired. John's such a great guy. He's up there, and he has organized a summer camp, jazz camp, concerts. Anything in Alaska, Anchorage, he's the one running it. He's the scene, and there's a lot going on. And he applies for grants, and he does all this stuff. So he was one of the people that I had talk to them. And I asked them just what you asked me. I said, John, what can you tell the kids here? We're on gallery view. You remember those Zoom days?
Yeah.
And he goes, well, and he mentioned the book, and I keep forgetting it, and I keep asking him, and he keeps telling me, and I just keep forgetting it. So that's how we stay in touch, I guess. But he said, and this was it. This was a gem. This is what I tell the kids. And it's two things. And the first thing isn't as easy as you might think, but it sounds easy. He goes, figure out what it is you love to do, which is probably what you're good at. Because you got to figure that out. Once you figure that out, figure out how to use that to make somebody else's life better.
Wow.
And that could flip into teaching. That could flip into anything. That could flip into being a landscaper. That could flip into anything. But you just can't serve somebody else until you're right. So you have to really think about what you want to do or what you like to do and what you're good at. Or, most of the time it's not discovery, like, I want to go find myself. No, you got to figure out what you're good at. And then a lot of times what you're good at, you wind up liking it because you're good at it. So he said, find out what you're good at and then use it to make somebody else's life better. And he goes, that spreads out. And when he said that, I wrote it down right away. I was like, whoa, that's what made me like teaching again. Because it was kind of easy for me to teach, and you're helping these kids. That's why the competitive thing, that's why Maynard, boom, right at that beginning of the thing again, it's great. And you could just enjoy it, and it could be bada bing, but it could be at this level, and that level is irrelevant. It's just the experience of it is what you can control. Yeah. Kind of.
That's great.
Is that wild?
Great
He said that, I was like, man, that's
I'm going to go write that down.
I have it written down. I'll send you my list. I have a list I keep a list of quotes. I can't remember them all.
Well, Denny, this has been awesome. And
Mikey.
I just want to say on a personal level, I appreciate you so much, and you've been an inspiration to me and so many people. And just keep doing what you do, because the impact that you've made on all of us and countless amount of students that have come out of your program is just tremendous. And I appreciate you and love you. And thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you.
And
this is good.
I hope everybody enjoyed our interview today with the great Denis DiBlasio. I
don't
sure
even
did.
know him.
And enjoy. Make sure to share us. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. And we will see you next time on Bone2Pick.